My name is Matthew Reynolds. Before this happened, I thought the safest place on a cruise ship was inside the ship, behind steel doors, away from the ocean. I didn't know those same doors could trap you exactly the way they were designed to. It was the fifth night of the cruise. The weather had gotten rough enough that everyone was staying inside. The theater was full, the bars were packed. I wanted somewhere quiet to call my wife. At the end of the hallway, a crew member pushed through a gray metal door with a cart. It stayed open just long enough for me to catch it. I figured it was just another hallway, maybe a shortcut to an outside deck. I stepped through. The door closed behind me, hard. I tried the handle, locked. I remember smiling. No big deal. The hallway didn't look dangerous, just narrower, no carpet, gray steel walls, bright fluorescent lights, pipes overhead. It smelled faintly of detergent and warm machinery. I assumed there'd be another exit in a minute or two. Instead, every corridor looked the same. Every intersection looked the same. Every heavy fire door opened one way and slammed shut behind me, each one sounding louder than the last. After about 10 minutes, I still hadn't found a passenger area. No signs, no artwork, no windows, just numbered doors that meant nothing to me. I took out my phone. No signal. The ship's Wi-Fi was gone too. That's when I realized I hadn't seen another person since I walked through that first door. Then, the entire ship shuddered. Not violently, just enough to make the pipes rattle. A second later, I heard something over the speakers. The words echoed through the metal corridors until they became impossible to understand. Then came the sound. 7 short blasts, 1 long blast. Every passenger hears that during the safety drill. Nobody expects to hear it for real. At first, nothing happened. Then, all around me, I heard deep metallic thuds, one after another. Clang, clang, clang. Fire doors, closing, automatically. The hallway I'd come from was now sealed. I ran back anyway. The handle wouldn't move. I pulled harder. Nothing. The ship had divided itself into compartments, and I was inside one of them. I started moving faster. Every door I reached was locked. Not because someone had locked me in, because that's exactly what those doors are supposed to do during an emergency. The engine noise got louder as I went deeper. It became hard to hear my own voice. I yelled. Nothing. I banged on the steel wall until my hands hurt. Still nothing. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. The floor wasn't level anymore. The ship had developed a slight list, not enough to panic anyone upstairs. Enough that I could feel myself leaning. For the first time, I stopped thinking about getting out. I started thinking, what if there's actually a fire? What if smoke reaches this section? What if they think everyone is already accounted for? I looked around for anything that resembled an emergency phone. Finally, I found one. Bright yellow, 1 button. I pressed it. Nothing. 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Then, a voice. State your compartment. I looked around. Every wall had numbers. None of them made sense. I couldn't answer. The operator asked me to stay where I was. I tried, I really did, but standing still, inside a steel corridor, listening to alarms echo through the ship, was impossible. I kept walking. About 2 minutes later, I turned a corner and froze. The hallway ended. A massive watertight door, twice as thick as the others, was slowly closing. Not fast, just steadily, hydraulic, deliberate. There was enough room to squeeze through. For a second, I actually considered it. Then I remembered every warning I'd ever heard about automatic doors. I stepped back. The gap grew smaller, then disappeared. The lock engaged with a sound I felt more than heard. If I'd tried to beat it, I don't know what would have happened. but I know I would have lost. A few minutes later, 2 crew members found me. One of them looked genuinely relieved. He didn't ask how I got there. He already knew. He said passengers sometimes follow crew through service doors. Most are found quickly, some aren't. He pointed at the watertight door behind me. "If you'd gone through before it closed," he said, "we would have been searching the wrong compartment." That sentence stayed with me, because I realized they hadn't been looking for me. They'd been looking for the compartment they believed I was in. 30 seconds later, I was back in the atrium. Music was playing, people were drinking coffee, children were laughing. Nobody looked frightened. Most of them never even knew the alarm had happened. I walked back to my cabin and stared at the evacuation map on the back of the door for a long time. It was the first time I realized I knew exactly how to find the buffet, but I had absolutely no idea how to find my way through the ship itself. People think cruise ships are floating hotels. They aren't. They're floating machines, built to survive emergencies. And if you're standing on the wrong side of the right door, those systems don't know you're a passenger. They only know they're doing exactly what they were designed to do. My name is Eric Sullivan. Everyone says, if an elevator stops, just wait. Help will come. That advice makes sense until the room around you starts getting hotter. And you realize the elevator isn't broken. The ship is. It was the second to last day of the cruise. Dinner had just ended. I was heading back to my cabin on deck 10. The elevator was crowded. A few people got off. By deck 6, only 2 of us remained. The doors opened. A crew member pushed in a housekeeping cart. He pressed a lower deck. The doors closed. Nothing seemed unusual. Halfway down, the elevator stopped. Not suddenly. It slowed, then settled. The lights stayed on. The fan kept running. Nobody panicked. We joked about getting free drinks afterward. Then, the fan stopped. The silence felt wrong. No music, no voices, no movement, just the faint vibration of the engines somewhere below. The crew member picked up the emergency phone. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. Then, the lights dimmed. Emergency power. A loud metallic bang echoed somewhere outside. The entire elevator shook. The crew member looked up. He didn't look scared. He looked focused. Then he quietly said, "We're between fire zones." I asked what that meant. He didn't answer. The air was getting warmer, not fast, just enough that you noticed. The crew member finally spoke. "If they're isolating compartments, they won't move this elevator until they're sure it's safe." I checked my watch. 10 minutes, 15, 20. The emergency phone finally crackled, one sentence. "Remain inside." Then silence again. 42 minutes later, the elevator moved, only a few feet. Then the doors opened, not onto a passenger deck, into a maintenance hallway. 2 engineers were waiting. One smiled and said, "You picked the wrong elevator." That night, I stopped seeing cruise ships as floating hotels. They're floating cities, and sometimes the safest place to wait still feels like a trap. My name is Ethan Brooks. I've taken several cruises, and I've learned something strange. If a cruise ship ever announces that they're looking for a passenger, pay attention. Because once, I watched the crew search an entire ship for a man. I could still see every single day. It happened during a 12-night Atlantic crossing, 5 straight days without seeing land. By the 3rd day, everyone had started recognizing familiar faces, the same bartender, the same couple at breakfast, the same people walking the promenade every evening. There was one passenger I noticed almost immediately. Mid-30s, navy baseball cap, paperback novel. Every afternoon, He sat alone beside the aft pool, always reading. We never spoke, but after seeing someone enough times, you stop thinking of them as strangers. On the fourth morning, an announcement came over the speakers. If anyone has had contact with passenger Michael Turner, please contact guest services immediately. Nobody seemed concerned. People assumed he'd overslept or missed a tour. By dinner, they announced his name again. This time, people started whispering someone was missing. The next morning, the captain addressed the entire ship. A guest hadn't been seen for more than 24 hours. Crew members were conducting a full search for the rest of the day. I noticed security officers quietly checking stairwells, lounges, empty elevators, even public restrooms. Then, that afternoon, I walked past the pool, and there he was, blue cap, same chair, same book. I actually laughed. They'd obviously found him. As I passed, I smiled and said, "They've been looking everywhere for you." He lowered his book, looked genuinely confused. "For who?" "You." He frowned. "I think you've got the wrong person." I apologized and kept walking. It was embarrassing. Until later that evening, I mentioned it to the bartender. "The guy over there." I pointed toward the pool. The bartender looked, then looked back at me. "There isn't anyone sitting there." I turned around. The chair was empty. Still, I convinced myself he'd simply walked away. The next afternoon, I saw him again. Same chair, same page. This time, I quietly took a picture. That evening, I showed the photo to my wife. She looked confused. "Why'd you take a picture of an empty chair?" I laughed, then looked at my phone. The chair was empty. The folded towel was there. The table was there. The ocean behind it was there. The man wasn't. That was the moment. I stopped trying to explain it. The following morning, I went straight to guest services. I asked if they'd found Michael Turner. The employee hesitated, then quietly said, "No, sir." I described him perfectly. Blue cap, paperback, mid-30s. She slowly opened a folder and placed an embarkation photo on the counter. It was him. Exactly him. My stomach dropped. He disappeared after the second night. I couldn't speak. Then she added something I'll never forget. "We've reviewed every security camera. We never see him after that." The cruise ended 3 days later. I tried convincing myself I'd imagined everything. Almost a year passed. Then one evening, I watched a cruise vlog filmed on that same ship. Different passengers, different voyage, different year. Halfway through the video, the camera slowly panned across the aft pool. There, in the exact same chair, sat the man in the blue cap, holding the same paperback. Nobody in the comments mentioned him. Nobody reacted. I paused the video, zoomed in, and noticed something I'd somehow missed every single time. The book wasn't open. He'd been holding it upside down. Every day I saw him, every photograph, every video. He never turned a page. He never looked down. He only looked like someone pretending to be a passenger.